Selim I was the ninth Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. He is best known for a short but successful reign of 8 years, during which he was able to expand the empire by 70%. In 1512, Selim, who was then the governor of Trebizond, would rebel against his father, Bayezid II, after he had announced Shahzade Ahmed as his heir apparent. Selim would ultimately seize the throne the same year. The first challenge of Selim as Sultan was the growing threat of the Safavid Empire in the east, which was adherent to the Twelver branch of Shia Islam. In 1514, Selim would defeat Shah Ismail of the Safavids at the Battle of Chaltaran due to possessing modern firearms and artillery. The victory would cause the Ottoman annexation of eastern Anatolia and northern Iraq. In 1516, Selim would then focus on the Mamluk Sultanate, and by 1517 would successfully annex and incorporate Egypt, Syria, and the Hejaz. As he was planning a campaign in the west, he would fall ill and die in the ninth year of his reign, at the age of 49. It is believed he had died due to a mistreated carbuncle, although some say he had died of cancer. Some say his physician had poisoned him, while others believe he died of a plague which was around in that period within the Ottoman Empire. What if, however, in an alternative timeline, Selim does not die this early during his reign? First, we need to set a reasonable amount of time for an alternative reign. Seeing that he died at the age of 49, let's say that in this alternative timeline, he dies at the age of 60, making his reign almost 18 years, more than double that of our timeline. Now, it was very difficult to find sources regarding the aforementioned Western campaign that was being planned before his death. Though after decrypting some poorly translated Turkish Wikipedia articles, it's claimed that Selim had ordered the preparation of a navy. There wasn't a proper target for this preparation, which alarmed the Venetians, who would start militarily reinforcing Cyprus. Now, there are two reasons given to why Selim had specifically ordered to prepare a navy. The first is that Pope Leo X was trying to convince Spain, Austria, France, and England to make an alliance against the Ottomans. Due to this, it is entirely possible that the preparation in the navy was mainly made in order to be superior at sea against a possible crusade. The second is that people within the Ottoman court had started encouraging Sultan Selim to conquer Rhodos. Selim knew that they did not have the proper supplies at that time for a siege of the island, but didn't want to be unsuccessful in the conquest of the island like Sultan Mehmed II had been. For this reason, he wanted the best preparation of the Ottoman navy. In our timeline, prior to his death, he had sent the Grand Vizier to Edirne to start the Western campaign, though this would be followed by Selim's death. With the ascension of Sultan Suleiman, an already prepared army and navy would attack Belgrade and capture it by August. We can expect something similar to happen in this timeline, though it could be 1 or 2 months earlier as Selim's death would have delayed the campaign. Following this, Selim would test his new navy by sieging Rhodos, and would be able to capture it under a similar time frame as in our timeline. Now in our timeline, Rhodos would be followed by the Battle of Moash, in which Suleiman defeated the Hungarian king Louis II. Throughout his campaign, Suleiman had always focused more in the west, unlike Selim, who had thought of the east as a bigger threat. In 1524, Shah Ismail would die and his 10-year-old son Tahmasp would become Shah, with Div Sultan Rumlu as the de facto ruler. Selim would start preparing for a war in the east in 1522, and by the end of 1524, all preparations would be done. In our timeline, the Safavid Ottoman wars during Suleiman were more of constant exchanges of acquired land between both empires. But now, with an earlier attack by the Ottomans under a more experienced leader, Selim would be able to capture Kurdistan while breaking into two armies. One, led by Ibrahim Pasha, would focus southward towards Baghdad, while the other, led by Selim himself, would focus eastward towards Tabriz. Suleiman would be guarding the western border in case of an attack from the European states, which could have taken place in case of an alliance between the Catholic states and the Shah, a very possible scenario. After some opening skirmishes, the Ottomans would be victorious at the Battle of Baghdad in July of 1525. At the same time, a civil war would start throughout the empire between the Turkmen Kizilbash tribes of Ostajlu and Takkalu, who were dissatisfied with the share of power they had received under the triumvirate signed between the tribes and Rumlu. The Uzbeks would also attack from the east. When Rumlu would try to punish the Turkmens, the civil war, which had seen the Ostajlu defeated, would turn into a rebellion against the Safavids by the Takkalu tribes. Following the atrocities committed to its tribe members, the remaining of the tribe would swear allegiance to the Ottomans. in exchange for governance over the Safavid capital of Tabriz if the Ottomans were successful. This would free some Ottoman troops who would be sent to Belgrade to join with Suleiman's forces. With the help of the Takkalu, Tabriz would be taken by the Ottomans in December 1525. From here they will move north, capturing Genge and later Tbilisi, now also occupying the Caucasus by 1526. The Ottomans would aid the Uzbeks in the east by supplying them with artillery, preventing a Safavid victory at the Battle of Jam. As a last-ditch attempt to pressurize the Ottomans, the Shah would write a letter to the European powers to help him in the war. This would give the young King Louis II his opportunity to regain his lost glory and would lead to him attacking the Ottoman army residing in Belgrade in June 1526. While the battle would be ongoing, reinforcements would come in the form of the troops that were returning from Tabriz, leading to an Ottoman victory. The Shah would try to use scorched earth tactics against the Ottomans to lure their armies to unoccupied territory, but the Ottoman armies would eventually retreat. Shah Tahmasp would now be forced to negotiate peace terms with the Ottomans, causing the annexation of Iraq, the Caucasus, Kurdistan, and Tabriz. The Safavids now no longer would pose a threat, and Selim would focus entirely in the west. He would firstly command Hayreddin Barbarossa to start the construction of a naval fleet, something that happened a lot later during Suleiman's reign in our timeline. A naval campaign to solidify Ottoman control of North Africa and further solidify control in Algiers would take place, but with minimal success. Personally, I don't think a Franco-Ottoman alliance is possible under Selim. Suleiman might have been open to the idea, however, I don't think Sultan Selim would accept something of that sort. Now, with a weakened Hungary in the east, following the defeat at Belgrade, Selim would start preparations for a western campaign in 1528. During this time, Ferdinand I and Charles V would try to siege Buda, but would be defeated. Instead of charging forward, Selim would keep a defensive, and rather gain as much strength as he could. In 1530, he would siege down Vienna, during which he would unexpectedly get ill and die at the outskirts of Vienna at the age of 60. With his death, Suleiman would ascend to the throne. Due to Selim's death, we could see a possible temporary setback for the Ottomans in those siege. But now with a stronger army and no other fronts to worry about, an Ottoman Vienna could be a possibility. In terms of future events, I think they would stay mostly the same. Suleiman would still bring reform to the Ottoman Empire and it would see its golden age during this time as well. I think the real change would be the external Ottoman influence. The Safavids would now be forced to give concessions to the east to the Uzbeks and could possibly see a crisis that could have been unfixable if it reached to a certain extreme. As for the West, without a real threat from the East during 1535 to 1560, the Ottomans could have reached an alternate extent of the empire. We could see it extending its influence deeper into Central Asia and could have a lasting presence there. With a weaker Safavid empire, we could also see strengthening of Mughal and Ottoman relations, and maybe even see joint military interventions in nearby lands.